Yet as a junior.
Is it on there?
Yeah. But now has a period and a comma after it. The minutes. Because it hasn't always had junior on it. It's always been, her name, I thought.
I think sometimes it depends which one we have to paste on.
Yeah, probably.
Also, if you want to address the board at the call the audience at our main board meeting, which will be at 6:40, please fill out a card in the back of the room. Are we ready?
Mr. Jaime?
He's gone, he went home sick.
Oh, okay.
He kept getting worse.
Oh, okay. I was like,
We didn't want him to.
we're starting without him.
He was sitting next to you, so.
Yeah, he was sitting next to you.
Well, I appreciate it.
We didn't want to make it.
You ready?
Sure do, sure will.
Call a meeting to order. Would you please join me in saluting the flag?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Roll call of the board, please.
Ms. Dawn? Here. Mr. Hernandez?
Present.
Mr. Jaramillo? Ms. Quintero?
Present.
Mr. Crouch?
Present. Is there a motion to approve the agenda?
I move we approve the agenda as submitted.
Second.
Roll call.
Ms. Dawn?
Yes.
Mr. Hernandez?
Aye.
Ms. Quintero?
Aye.
Mr. Crouch?
Aye. First item on the agenda is general functions, public hearing, adoption of the 2017-18 budget. Mr. Encinas.
Thank you, President Crouch, board members, Superintendent Holmes. As required by statute, the public hearing must be held prior to the governing board's adopting a school district's budget. Attached for your information and the public's information is the proposed 2017-18 adopted budget, which the governing board will be requested to adopt at our regularly scheduled meeting following this public hearing. At this time, the governing board is requested to solicit public input regarding the budget, at which time we can address any questions that may be presented. So,
If anyone in the audience has any questions or comments, you're free at this time to come forward and speak to the board.
there being none, then
There being none.
then next item on the agenda.
Ms. Dunn?
No,
Next item on the agenda is public hearing on the 1.06% increase to teacher salaries. Mr. Encinas.
Thank you, Mr. Crouch, board members, Superintendent Holmes. The Arizona State Legislature and Governor Ducey approved an increase to teacher salaries for the fiscal year 2018 by an amount of 1.06%. And that amount is to be calculated based on what those individuals received as teachers under Function 1000. We have to total up the total amount of compensation paid those individuals, and then apply a 1.06% increase to those individual salaries. Again, the only individuals qualifying for this raise would be quote-unquote teachers, therefore have to be what we determine or we define as classroom teachers. The governing board will be asked to take separate action in a separate agenda item approving the increase at the regularly scheduled meeting. At this time, the governing board is requested to solicit public input regarding this issue.
Does anyone in the public have any questions, comments, or anything they'd like to address the board on based off the 1.06 increase to teacher salaries? Ms. Martinez?
I guess my question,
Please come to the mic.
my question is it based on the salary of the upcoming year or the year before?
Our understanding is that it is based on last year's salaries. The issue, two issues at hand. One, we'll have to calculate exactly how much the district paid continuing teachers to our district, how much they were paid under Function 1000. And Function 1000 is considered instruction. And interestingly enough, a athletic coach is considered instruction. So any salaries received as a classroom teacher, any addendas received as a coach, under athletic coach, that'll be part of the calculation of which we'll apply the 1.06%. The second part to this will be that the teachers qualifying for this raise include any teacher that worked in a public school or a charter school last year. So we as a district will be employing those individuals, and then we'll have to contact their former employer and ask them to provide us the information as far as how much they were compensated under Function 1000, and then we'll apply that 1.06% to that amount that was paid last year.
And then my understanding from reading was that it's going to be two different, I guess, stipends, so one in December, one in May.
That's the proposal that's going to be addressed by the governing board at the regular meeting.
Okay, and then something will be sent out explaining
I
to
assume-
teachers how all this came about?
I assume that'll be, yes.
Thank you.
Are there any other comments or questions from the audience? Anyone? Mrs. Dawn?
Mr. Crouch, I move that we adjourn the public hearing.
Second.
Roll call?
Ms. Dawn?
Yes.
Mr. Hernandez?
Aye.
Ms. Quintero?
Aye.
Mr. Crouch?
Aye, meeting's adjourned. We will reconvene at 6:40 with the regular board meeting.
Timer. We're setting a 2-minute timer?
No, we're going to use the clock in the back. It'll be about the same, so thank you. Please join me in salute the flag.
Solos, this is third time. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you again. Again, anyone that hasn't signed the register in the back, we'd appreciate it. Roll call of the board.
Ms. Strong,
Here.
Mr. Hernandez,
Present.
Mr. Jaramillo, Ms. Quintero,
Present.
Mr. Crouch.
Present. Next item on the agenda is approval of the agenda.
I move we approve the agenda as submitted. Second.
Roll call.
Ms. Strong,
Yes.
Mr. Hernandez,
Aye.
Ms. Quintero,
Aye.
Mr. Crouch.
Aye. Next item is governing board comments. Mr. Hernandez.
None at this time, Mr. Crouch.
Thank you, Mr. Hernandez. Ms. Quintero.
I do. I want to congratulate Roman Bravo Young, who is #1 in the nation for wrestling. I'm so excited. We're so happy for him. I'm not wrestling him.
Ms. Dawn.
Quite a legacy that family has. Now, I'm just excited about the new school year. I know that the new teachers are coming on board this week, and that's exciting that we have a whole bunch of excited new teachers coming on board and that are going to be going through and seeing the Sunnyside family as it is. So that's all. Just want to say congratulations to all the new teachers that are coming on board, and hope you all had a great summer.
Thank you, Ms. Dawn. And I'd like to echo both of your comments. They were very apropos. I have no other comments at this time. Superintendent's report, Mr. Holmes.
President Crouch, members of the governing board, and members of the audience. What happened to June? I cannot believe we're in July, but I'd like to start by recognizing our Liberty teacher who received a great scholarship, Ms. Rosa Watson. Was awarded a 2017 Engineering as Elementary Scholarship for her commitment to engineering education. As a result, Ms. Watson traveled to Boston to complete a 2-day professional development workshop at the Museum of Science in Boston. And participants receive curriculum training so they may reach out to more children in the underrepresented STEM communities. And so it's a great opportunity. We've been very committed to the EEI kits. But here's a teacher who's really taken it to the next level and can be a model for us, our continued implementation of that work. So thank you, Ms. Watson. We also have investing in play and creativity. In other words, we got new equipment. So students Elvira, Esperanza, Liberty, Los Niños, Mission Manor, and Cotillo will start the school year with new resources and safer environments. I think that was a topic of conversation with Mr. Jaramillo last time to really have some dialogue around playgrounds and their safety. So Play It Safe Playgrounds installed new playground equipment and replaced sand with engineered wood fiber playground chips that are tested to be a superior product long-term with trouble-free performance. So investments will reduce upkeep and maintenance in that area, and not to mention that it looked really nice. And they're actually shade structures, so that's always a good thing in these record heats. So hopefully they'll last at least 2 years. So go out and see them. And then wonderful opportunity for Sunnyside High School wrestler Roman Bravo Young. He earned the #1 U.S. rank among all high school wrestlers. Roman has committed to attend Penn State upon graduation. Who knows that will change or not, but it's great to see Roman. This accolade further cements the pedigree of Sunnyside renowned wrestling program. Great young man, great individual, great opportunity for all of our students to have such a talent. There was an article just more recently, top 10 wrestlers in the newspaper, like ever from Arizona, and the majority of them were Sunnyside students. And Roman was actually on the list, which says a lot about the quality of this young man and what he brings to both the sport and his command of just the work and commitment to being out there and giving 100% every day. And that's a true testament to what a Sunnyside student is. So thank you, Roman, for being a great role model. That concludes our superintendent's report.
Thank you, Mr. Holmes. Next item on the agenda is recognition. I don't believe we have any recognitions tonight. Next item on the agenda is call to the audience. Do we have any calls to the audience? No calls to the audience. Next item on the agenda is the consent agenda.
I move that we approve the consent agenda as submitted.
Second.
Roll call.
Ms. Dawn?
Yes.
Mr. Hernandez?
Aye.
Ms. Quintero?
Aye.
Mr. Crouch?
Aye, motion passes.
You're up.
Next item on the agenda is the SUSD 12 Employee Benefits Trust. Dr. Bergman.
Good evening, President Crouch, members of the board, Superintendent Holmes, and members of the audience. I'm bringing forward tonight the proposed agreement being presented to you over the last few board meetings for consideration and approval. The agreement will give the new SUSD 12 Employment Benefit Trust, which will provide the SUSD 12 Employee Benefits Trust Board with the guidelines needed to operate this new trust that we're putting in place for the 17-18 school year. Questions, concerns?
Any questions from the board? Ms. Dawn.
Mr. Crouch, I move that we approve the Sunnyside 12 Employee Benefits Trust Agreement as submitted.
Second.
Roll call.
Ms. Dawn?
Yes.
Mr. Hernandez?
Aye.
Ms. Quintero?
Aye.
Mr. Crouch?
Aye, motion passes. Thank you, Dr. Bergman.
Thank you.
Next item on the agenda is SUSD 12 Employee Benefits Trust Member Approval. Dr. Bergman.
Yes. Good evening, President Crouch, members of the board, Superintendent Holmes, and members of the audience. As you know, the SUSD 12 Employee Benefit Trust has been created to review, monitor, and recommend all the aspects of the employees' benefits and self-insured program. The Board of Trustees will contain 5 members that will represent the district and the employees' best interests when it comes to our benefits. But in order to implement the bank account that we need to put into place that will hold all fundings, that will issue the payments for all claims effective September 1, 2017. And as Mr. Holmes said, that's going to be like tomorrow because we're moving so quickly. We need to name the one member who will be the employee member. And so I'm bringing forward a recommendation that Ms. Laura Emsley, our HR director, will be that Sunnyside representative and the employee member on the trust board.
Any questions from the board? Ms. Quintero.
So when is the deadline for any future?
That's a good question. We want to, we want to have all the rest of the members on board before the September 1 as well. We have had 2 applications sent in. We're reaching out. In fact, we sent more emails out today to see if we could get 2 more. Our consultants are also working diligently to grab individuals who may be interested. We're really looking for somebody who has a background in finance and somebody who has a background in health. And so we have a balance of what they bring forward in the trust. And we're hoping to have those applications to Mr. Holmes for you to be able to look at, and then in August, bring the names forward for your
Great, thank you.
You're welcome. Good question.
Ms. Dawn.
I move that we approve Ms. Laura Emsley, HR Director as the Sunnyside Unified School District, as the employee member of the trust board.
Second.
Roll call.
Ms. Dawn?
Yes.
Mr. Hernandez?
Aye.
Ms. Quintero?
Aye.
Mr. Crouch?
Aye, motion passes. Thank you, Dr. Bergman.
Thank you for all your support in this process. Really appreciate it.
Next item on the agenda is adoption of the 2017-18 budget. Mr. Encinas.
Thank you, President Crouch, Board Members, Superintendent Holmes. Tonight, we are asking the governing board for approval and that you adopt the 2017-18 budget as presented. The budget that is being brought before you for approval is identical to that budget which was approved, or there was a proposed budget that was approved in June. Just like to point out that the budget does reflect a decrease, overall decrease of about 3.1%, and that decrease is in in totality as a result of a loss of approximately 600 students from the 2016-17 budget that was used to calculate that 16-17 budget. And for the boards, and the board really knows this 2016-17 budget was approved based on an ADM of 15,821 students, which was our 15-16 ADM. So in essence, we're jumping down from 15.8 down to projected 15.2 this year. That's over 600 students, which reflects over $2.5 million reduction. In addition to that, because of the fact that in FY 15-16, we did have a substantial budget balance carry forward as a result of the passage of Proposition 123. Our budget balance carry forward for 15-16 was over $4 million. That money was used for salaries as approved by the governing board. That budget balance carry forward of over $4.2 million in 15-16 is projected to be about $3.1 million this past year, 16-17. So it's about $1,300,000 deduction in our budget balance carry forward. So even with that, though, based on our expenditures, based on review of our programs, based on staffing, we feel very confident that the budget of $82 million plus will be enough to be able to not only continue our programs, but also implement the salary increases which the governing board has approved of 2% for all employees, and in addition, the 1.06% increase approved by the governor and the legislature for teachers. So unless you have any questions, I would request the governing board to adopt the 2017-18 budget as presented.
Any questions or discussion from the board? Ms. Dawn?
I move that we approve the adopted 2017-2018 budget as submitted.
Second.
Roll call.
Ms. Dawn?
Yes.
Mr. Hernandez?
Aye.
Mr. Otero?
Aye.
Mr. Crouch?
Aye, motion passes. Next item on the agenda is the 2018-19 12% override M&O budget and alternative M&O budget. Mr. Encinas.
Thank you, Mr. Crouch, board members, Superintendent Holmes. On June 27th, the governing board did approve and call for a special election, a 12% M&O override election to be held on November 7th. The resolution has been submitted to the Pima County School Superintendent's Office, and they have initiated all preparation for the election to be held on that date. In addition, they are holding some meetings to hopefully consolidate the election with the city of Tucson, and based on my communication with Mr. Hernandez, the Pima County School Superintendent's chief deputy, apparently other school districts are also having elections on that same date, and the conversations about consolidation with the cities are also being held by them also. So in all likelihood, it will be a consolidated election. For the board's information, the community's information, the proposition number that's been assigned to our M&O budget referendum is Proposition 457. So that's how it'll appear on the ballot, Proposition 457. And just this past Sunday, the Pima County School Superintendent's Office did run a public notice in the paper, identical to the one that was attached to the agenda item, whereby we are advertising the fact that we are holding a budget, an override election budget, and that we are soliciting input or arguments opposing or supporting the election that must be filed with their office by August 11th, 5 o'clock. One thing that has changed that I'm aware of is in the past override elections, the informational pamphlet did contain a pro-statement by the governing board of a school district. That is no longer allowable. Individual board members can submit statements, but as individuals, not as board members. So, the request of the governing board tonight is for you to approve the budgets that have been prepared, one reflecting a 12% M&O override increase, and the other one reflecting a budget with no increase. And attached to the agenda item are those two budgets, substantially and drastically different by over $9.5 million. And therefore, the last phase or last step that we need to take as a school district to proceed with the requirements is to present and forward these two budgets to the Pima County School Superintendent's office as soon as you approve it.
Any questions from the board? Ms. Dahl?
Mr. Crouch, I move to approve the proposed fiscal year 19 12% M&O override budget and the proposed fiscal year 19 alternative M&O budget as submitted.
Second.
Roll call?
Ms. Dawn?
Yes.
Mr. Hernandez? Ms. Quintero?
Aye.
Mr. Crouch?
Aye. Motion carries. Next item on the agenda is approval to increase teacher salaries by 1.06%. Mr. Encinas?
Thank you, Mr. Crouch, board members, Superintendent Holmes. Again, as required by statute, the governing board did approve, adopted a budget that includes funds for the granting of an additional 1.06% increase to teachers qualifying under the definition of a classroom teacher, function 1000. The amount that is included there is, we estimated amount, and I estimated that that'd be $454,676. That's included in the budget limit. The requirements of the payment basically are that the teacher must have worked for a public school district or a charter school district last year. My understanding is also that it does not include substitute teachers nor contracted teachers. That's my understanding. So, therefore, we will be calculating the total amounts we've paid those individuals last year, be contacting school districts that employed school teachers that qualify, that are working for this year, then come up with an amount. And the proposal is to pay the amount in two lump sum payments, one to be paid prior to our winter break, which is December 22nd, and then the balance to be paid on the last pay period of the regularly scheduled 10-month calendar, which would be June 8th. Any new qualifying teachers hired by the district after January 2018 who have not received this increase from the previous employer will be paid the amount on June 8th. And in addition, in the event a teacher does not complete a full year of service, the amount that would be paid would have to be prorated based on the actual number of contract days worked during the school year. In other words, if I started school district this year and I qualified for, let's say, a $480 increase, and I decided to leave the district at mid-year, it is my understanding that that raise was based on a full year's worth of service. They would not be entitled to the $480 to be prorated based on the actual contract days. So, unless the governing board has any questions, request the governing board to approve the payment of the 1.06% to certified teachers as presented.
Thank you, Mr. Encinas. Ms. Dahl, you have a question?
Yes. Can you tell me what are the differences between the teachers that qualify for 301 versus the teachers that are going to qualify for this particular?
We have individuals who are certified, individuals that will have a certificate that qualify for Prop 301, such as librarians. They are a function 2120. Counselors. That'd be it. Counselors.
The rest of them are PNT, and they're not qualified. Money has been built into
The program.
So it's okay.
And they're not function 1000. So basically it'd be librarians and counselors that are certified and qualify for 301, but would not qualify under the definition of classroom teacher under this proposal.
Thank you.
Ms. Dahl?
I move that we approve payment of the 1.06% increase to qualifying certified teachers as presented.
Second.
Roll call?
Ms. Dawn?
Yes.
Mr. Hernandez?
Aye.
Ms. Quintero?
Aye.
Mr. Crouch?
Aye. Motion passes. Next item on the agenda is for an approval to join the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency's Energy Star Program. Mr. Encinas, you're up again.
Thank you, Mr. Crouch. I think I'll turn this over to Ms. Cindy Beauvais. We are extremely fortunate as a school district to have such a qualified individual, committed individual in terms of her position and her dedication to this district. And I'll just turn this over to Cindy to present in regards to getting approval from the governing board to further proceed and reinforce our commitment to energy conservation.
Thank you, Board President Crouch, members of the board, and Superintendent Mr. Holmes. I'm very excited about what we're about to enter into. And the energy partnership will allow us to obtain more materials for education and training, the ability to legally use their logo on our materials for the next project that we're going to be entering into. Also, I think it looks, and my ultimate goal is to get our buildings Energy Star certified, because I think it would show our community that we're committed to our energy savings and that we're being fiscally responsible with their tax dollars. So it's really a big deal to get that Energy Star plaque on the buildings. And we're really not, that goal is not that far off to be able to do this. So the first step is getting the partnership before I can move into the next part of our presentation for tonight.
So our request at this agenda item is to allow us to join and approve our joining the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency's Energy Star program.
Any questions? Ms. Quintero,
I'll make the motion, it's okay.
please.
I'll make a motion to approve the adjoining the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency's Energy Star program.
Second?
Roll call?
Ms. Strong,
Yes.
Mr. Hernandez,
Aye.
Ms. Quintero,
Aye.
Mr. Crouch.
Aye, motion passes. Next item on the agenda is authorization to establish Battle of the Buildings Sunnyside competition program. Mr. Sinis?
Yes, sir. I think there's a better way to incite people to become involved and to get them to fight, right? In a good way, though. In a good way. Ms. Beauvais has again, stirred some really excitement from some of our sites to get some competition between themselves or amongst themselves to become more energy efficient, and in doing so, involve the staff, involve students, and also involve support from outside organizations that are willing to commit some resources to our cause of becoming more energy efficient, and also educate our students in terms of how to become more energy efficient, what can we do to make sure that our globe and our environments are
Reduce our carbon footprint.
exactly. Okay. So I'll just turn this over to Cindy. Okay.
Okay, and this whole presentation is green, you see, because that's what we're doing, we're going green. I'm doing this because, as you know, we put a lot of bond money out there for upgrades back in 2012 and 2013. And then after 2014, we went ahead and we have been using performance contracts. And we've been reducing energy every year since putting in the new equipment and doing the energy performance contracts. We've got an excellent preventative maintenance program going, which also has proven to be an outstanding energy reducer, and that documentation really shows really well in the Energy Star program once you put together a building portfolio, and it gives you what your score is. For example, I'm going to tell you what our score is from Challenger. In 2014, our energy score was 42. Today, our energy score, and this was after, upgrades, that was put out there. Today, our energy score for Challenger is at 72. In order to be Energy Star certified, you have to have a score of 75 to 100. So we're just 5 points away. So when you stand back and look at all that we've done and where we've come to, one of the last elements is, behavioral changes in educating people. And by doing this with our students, what they learn in school, they can take home to their families to help them reduce their own energy bills. And, things we take for granted, I think that will be brought to the forefront. and not ignore certain things. Yeah, we do have occupancy sensors so that as people walk out of the rooms, they don't have to worry about turning off lights. It happens automatically. The HVAC goes into standby. But with this, the kids will learn to take a kilowatt meter, and which I'm planning on getting donated, lots of little kits and trinkets and things like that. They'll be able to plug it into an outlet and plug in a printer, and then leave that printer set like they do 24/7. And then they get to understand what vampire energy is. You know, it's still draining power even while it's not used. You know, and then the staff will learn this also. They'll be giving out red energy tickets for not so good and green energy tickets for excellent behavior with the staff. Can we pull up some slides? And we're going to start this whole process. First of all, it's going to be a 90-day battle from September 1st to November 31st, but we're going to have an official kickoff, and we're going to make this, you know, a really, really big deal for the district. And I'm doing this with 3 schools because we were venturing out on our own to do this. EPA was going to do it this year, but they dropped it right at May 11th. You know, after I was gathering all the materials up, getting really excited to do this, and made some contact with the schools, and yes, they wanted to do this. Well, because EPA dropped it, doesn't mean that we have to drop it. We can still go forward to it, but was going to be on our own. But now the EPA found out that we are going to do this. I just got an email last week from this Brandon Hall from Washington, D.C. He's not officially in it, but he's worked on it before, and he also wants to support it. So that's good news. So we have our Battle of the Buildings kickoff date. So save the date for August 1st, and we've already invited the mayor to be at this, and he said yes. So it's going to be a really big deal. How does the competition work? It's who's going to be the biggest energy loser, you know, so we'll have this battle going on, the biggest loser as well. The resources that we're going to be using, a lot of it's going to come from TEP. I just met again last week with TEP, and I can't even begin to tell you how excited the TEP is, you know, that we're going to do this. And they've got curriculum materials for kids from preschool to college, and they want to support us with those. They want to offer kits. They want to pay for the grand prize, you know, whatever we decide it might be. They want to come in and help the teachers with this process, as well as some of our contractors and vendors that we've used in the past. So as word gets out about this, there's a lot of stakeholders that just really want to embrace this. And according to TEP, we're the first ones in Tucson doing this. So that's the other thing that they're excited about. They want to put it up on their website that they're supporting Sunnyside doing this. So by doing this for the 90 days, we won't get our scores until December once all the utility bills come in, and then we'll figure it out by percentages as which one is the winner. Hopefully, what I'd really like to do is expand it out to all the schools next year. You know, having more time, knowing what to expect, and after we debrief on doing this with the 3 schools. But I think the 3 schools that are doing it, they've got total buy-in. They're totally excited. They got some competitive emails going back and forth already. Yeah. So it's going to be a fun thing to do. So. Yeah, so you know, we've been just kind of mapping it out each step as we go. We are going to keep, I think it's going to grow as it's going, because like I said, we haven't done this before. And the other thing is, I was just told that the USGBC of Arizona, they want to sync up with us. They're also going to do it. So they want to be there to support us while they're doing it too at the same time. So that's even more good news. So there's one of the TEP sites too. And then when the teams are going in to shrink their waistlines, because even recycling counts on the energy scores. So. And there's the people that have already said that they would commit to us. So, and then the end goal is, like I said, I'd like to take it out to all schools next year. So, and then eventually I'd also like to become a member of the 2030 district for Tucson. Right now they're an emerging district where they commit to by 2030 they reduce their energy by half of what the medium is. We're already 30 points over the medium. We may end up only having to reduce another 20% or 10%. So I think that's a goal that's achievable for us. And I think it would really be great if we could merge in with a 2030 district as well as doing this. So, and those are pretty high standards, but you know, it's something to hold our feet to, I think. So, any questions?
Which of the sites that are doing the
The
battle?
3 sites that's going to do it for this year is Elvira, Challenger, and Star.
Good job.
Any questions from the board?
Sounds exciting. Sounds exciting.
It is.
Ms. Dunn?
So I'd like to move to approve the establishment of the Battle of the Buildings Sunnyside Competition Program.
Second.
Is it
Roll call.
competition there?
It's competition.
Ms. Strong?
Yes.
Mr. Hernandez?
Aye.
Ms. Quintero?
Aye.
Mr. Crouch?
Aye, motion passes. Thank you, it sounds like an exciting program. Next item on the agenda is Superintendent's Performance Goals, 2017-2018. Mr. Holmes.
Mr. Crouch and members of the governing board, thank you for this afternoon where we were able to spend some substantive time discussing just a little bit of our priorities and what our learning theory is for the district and what we're going to be focusing on. I think that helped to shape some key areas that we felt would best help us focus in areas that surfaced as not only concerns, but places where we can leverage, I think, better opportunities for our students, our teachers, and of course our parents and community. The 3 areas that surfaced particularly were the areas of customer service, 4 areas, achievement, enrollment, and leadership. And the goals that were established are as follows, and I'll read them through and try to clarify maybe some of the language here. In the areas of customer service specifically, we're focused on implementing customer satisfaction survey at all of our 21 elementary, middle, and high schools, really relative to the enrollment and disenrollment of students and our parents' experience in that area. Of course, because there's some interrelation to our enrollment, figure let's get the survey of what are we doing right, how do parents feel about how they go and enroll, and then equally important for us, if students are disenrolling, why are they disenrolling, and get a little bit more of data on that. Equally important is to look at our 3 departments that really drive a lot of the work. Transportation literally drives a lot of things, so looking at transportation, business, and human resources office, and really looking at just ways of marrying what HR is currently doing, which is just getting information from folks on how we're doing. I think that's the key to customer service, is where we can figure out growth. And really the important piece of this in this particular subsection of the goal is to look at the growth and response rates. So we'd like to see over time the more people are responding, of course, knowing full well that we'd like to see positive responses as well. And so that's always the concern. Most in many cases, sometimes what gets responded maybe not always a positive interaction, but I think if we can encourage it to be something that's going to help grow, then I believe we can see a lot of those positive ones as well. So that's one big area. The other area, which is subsection of this goal, is to provide professional development for office staff as a priority, monitors, cafeteria work, custodians, bus drivers, and other classified staff that interact with parents and the public. And we want to quantify the number of participants with mandatory participation for each school and school site. Again, focusing on those first folks that have interaction with the public and with our folks. Knowing full well it's important for us to continue to drive satisfaction with the client, which is our parents and our students, first and foremost. And so as establishing these goals, I just want to make sure it's real clear, is not saying that there's a major problem in our district. It's saying that we're constantly starting to get better. If we're going to preach continuous improvement, it really means that where are those leverage areas, and customer service is one of those areas that we got to leverage. And then taking advantage of what has been established in the Human Resources Department with the surveys, and really creating a sample model for really implementing and what we're calling an action improvement process for the data that's collected. In other words, we got surveys getting the data, now what do we do with it? Right? So what's the ways in which we create a model for the use of data, so as our finance department at our schools, our transportation receive feedback, what's the proactive way of surfacing the data into actionable steps. And so because Human Resources is already implementing a survey, we felt that was the best place by which we could begin to model a sample for other departments to use so that the data is being useful. So that's really those big areas of focus in the area those sub-areas of focus in the area of customer service. In the area of achievement, of course, improving the aggregate performance in literacy and mathematics by a minimum of 5%. Of course, we want to continue to be bold in our efforts to improve performance, but it seems, as we're looking at reasonable growth, we have seen that we want to make sure, because we're starting further behind, that we're increasing our aggregate at a faster rate than the state. The states have been averaging 2 to 3% growth across, and we've chose 5% because we do have to play some catch-up. But it's also realistic. I believe in the aggregate for mathematics this year, we saw that 5% growth. A little bit flat on ELA at the elementary level, but we're seeing some progress, which makes, I believe, this goal very doable. But it's still within the bounds of stretching us past what the growth is on the average at the state level. And the secondary goal in this area is a little bit more complex, but I'm going to try to do my best in explaining what that means. So minimizing the variability in performance across grade levels per school. And let me stay with that right now. One of the biggest concerns that we've discussed in the new phase of our work is really dealing with the variability in performance within a school. In other words, we have third grade performing at one performance level, fourth grade will be performing at a different level than fifth grade. So we may see higher performance at third, lower at fourth, back up higher at fifth, and then back down lower at sixth. And that's just not consistent across our schools, but that variability in performance is something we have to work towards creating much more uniformity. In other words, we should have consistency in performance across grades. And that's really what we're looking at. And I try to quantify it a bit by adding this base minimally in the cohort performance from the previous year. In other words, if students are performing at 35% mastery at third grade, then as they move into fourth grade, minimally we should see 35% mastery of the students moving into fourth grade. If they're moving lower, then we should have some concerns. So our minimum expectation from the aggregate moving from grade to grade should be the cohort performance of the year before. And so when we're dealing with variability, that's our minimum standard. However, if the students are moving from third to fourth grade at a minimum proficiency or master proficiency level of 35%, and the fifth grade cohort is performing at 45%, then we've got to look at how do we close that gap between the two grade levels. Of course, when a cohort by cohort, it's different, and I'm not suggesting that's necessarily a bad thing. I'm suggesting that it's something that we need to work towards to really decrease the variability, because I do believe that consistency across grades and performance are important for parents as they're making choices to keep their kids in our schools. And if they see somehow their children a certain grade level performing much lower than what was performing in the grade previously, it gives them pause to look at other places. And that's why we want to look particularly at that and working with our teachers to really define what those variables are that are causing that. The third area is in enrollment. Of course, it has to be a priority because we are in a declining enrollment. So one of our primary goals is to develop an enrollment campaign geared at recapturing students that have left or never enrolled, and specifically attracting new students to our district. And so those are really being much clearer on the variables by which we're going to look at a campaign for. Because there are students that are leaving us for reasons that are beyond our control, but, we have to question if kids are never enrolling with us to begin with, and what are we doing not attracting them? And of course, continue to capture kids from other places who would like to have the Sunnyside experience. Equally important in enrollment is to establish a positive citywide presence to regain a formative reputation regarding the educational experience in our district. Really emphasize the positive image that we're continuing to work on, and really gather artifacts in these efforts made so that when at the end of the year we can quantify the impact of this particular effort to create a much greater and more positive citywide presence. And then lastly, in the area of leadership, there's a few things that, as we have many changes by school with leadership, some of the institutional practices associated with how we run schools, quite frankly, that institutional memory becomes lost. And so we're really setting expectations around documenting what it is we do every single day in running a school or running an organization. It started with us as a central office by creating a principal handbook that will become that particular guidelines that really archives what their expectations are for each of the departments relative to a leader. And so the expectation now that it rolls down and we establish a formal document that outlines policies, procedures, and work instruction related to standard school operations. In essence, a staff handbook with greater detail. The variability and implementation of policies across schools is concerning. I'll give you a perfect example is our open enrollment policy. How do we enroll a child? What's the documentation we expect to have? And again, some of these things that we take for granted have fallen apart because we had changes in leadership and haven't really been consistent in creating documentation that could stay in place regardless of who comes in. And so that's an expectation under goal 1. And again, consistency across schools with standard operation procedures and consistent with our standard operation procedure and district policy. Again, not having every school create their own rules and regulations, rather consistent with what governing board policy is in those key areas. Also, in leadership, placing a stronger emphasis on effective communication with students, teachers, families in the existing principal evaluation instrument. It is part of that. Placing greater emphasis for us just really means it's a value of importance. It always has been, but the greater emphasis in this day and age where we're looking at recruitment, retaining students, we're looking at retaining teachers, we're looking at creating a new public image around our district, how we communicate it has to be a big variable in how we look at our evaluation system. So again, it's something that currently exists. It's more playing a greater emphasis, and we highlight throughout the year as we're looking at our phase process in the evaluation cycle with our leaders. And that includes central office. So when I think of leaders, it's not just in principal, but as we look at all of us and how we're placing emphasis in that particular area. And lastly, to develop a community outreach plan unique to each school that encourages greater involvement from and with the broader school community. One of the things that we've been, kind of another little mantra that we've continued to say when we work with our principals is that they're de facto community leaders. And how do you then become much more involved in your community and create a greater presence? Not, I work in the community, but I serve in the community. And so that nuance of becoming more involved and creating greater outreach with our community is something that we are going to continue to emphasize this year, and that's why we put it down as a goal to really do much more with our outreach with our community so that people know that we really care about the broader issues associated with the community that we're serving in, because that footprint has great reach, and I know there's a lot of folks in our community that want to be involved. I'm not sure we've consistently have reached out to them, and it varies school by school, and so this is just again resetting a common expectation across all of our schools. And so those are the goals that we have emphasized for the 17-18 school year that I'm asking for approval this evening.
Thank you, Mr. Holmes. I thought it was a very valuable session that we had this afternoon at the retreat to discuss the goals. It was very insightful for me to understand some of the background behind some of the issues, and I really appreciate your time on it.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions from the board, or?
It was good spending time with you all. And I would like to make a motion.
Please.
To approve the superintendent performance goals for the school year 2017-2018 school year.
Second.
Roll call?
Ms. Strong?
Yes.
Mr. Hernandez?
Aye.
Ms. Quintero?
Aye.
Mr. Crouch?
Aye, motion passes. Next item on the agenda is request for executive session. Mr. Holmes. Oh, no, you
Mr.
don't.
Crouch.
You don't need to do that. Ms. Don, it's been a long day.
Yes.
Ms. Don.
I move to approve the board recess into executive session for discussion of personnel pursuant to ARS 38-431.03A1.
Second.
Roll call?
Ms. Strong?
Yes.
Mr. Hernandez?
Aye.
Ms. Quintero?
Aye.
Mr. Crouch?
Aye, motion passes. We'll recess into executive session with a 5-minute recess before, yes, 5-minute recess before
Yes,
that.
thank you.
Thank you. Call the meeting back to order.
Mr. Crouch,
Mr. Hernandez.
I move that we approve the appointment of N.J. Utter, Director of Career and Technology Education for the 2017-2018 school year, and be placed on step 6.
Second?
Roll call.
Ms. Dawn?
Yes.
Mr. Hernandez?
Aye.
Ms. Quintero?
Aye.
Mr. Crouch?
Aye, motion passes.
Congratulations.
Did you want it?
Mr. Crouch, I move that we adjourn. Oh, we have another one?
Not yet.
Oh, you have to do your thing there.
I do.
Yes, it's-
We have,
it is important.
do we have suggestions for future agenda items? Ms. Quintero?
Thank you. 2 things. Since we did get our first good rain, can we have a report on the status of all our roofs on the schools? Yes, thank you. And then the second one? Yeah, how many leaks? It's like, I got 10 at my house. So, being as how we, passed those goals of increasing higher standards, I would like a report on the athletic policy, how it worked this year, and what the status is of that policy. You understand?
As a Friday report or
As
or a board
a
report?
board report.
Any other suggestions for future agenda items? Ms. Dawn, your motion.
I move that we adjourn.
Second.
Roll call.
Ms. Dawn?
Yes.
Mr. Hernandez?
Aye.
Ms. Quintero?
Aye.
Mr. Crouch?
Aye, motion carries. Meeting's adjourned.